Hi, everyone. Let's connect with Mindie today, Mindie Barnett, and let's see if she is on. So today we are going to be having a live with Mindie. Hi, Mindie.
Hi,
How
how
are
are you?
you? I am well, and yourself?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Hanging in.
Very nice to finally meet you.
Likewise, I feel like we're like distant friends, like disconnected, but we've always kind of known each other as I feel like I know you already.
I
I
know.
love your feed. I love your vibe. I think you bring so much to the universe. So, yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. I feel the same way, and
Thank you.
it gives me such pleasure to discuss your book.
Yay!
Intermission, which I really enjoyed reading. It was
Oh, thank you.
something I read in a few hours, very, very captivating. So instead of me talking about it, how about, we get to learn more about you. So how about introducing yourself to our lovely viewers?
Okay, I'd be happy to. So, I am a former news anchor reporter. I spent about 10 years in television news, kind of traveling the country, different media markets and things of that nature, which is pretty standard in TV news. And then I sort of hung up my hat, I should say, in television news about 17 years ago now. I feel like I'm so old. Anyway, I opened up my public relations firm at about 17 years ago and sort of to position myself as a media strategist because of my news background. Around the same time, I met my then husband, started a family, was doing the entrepreneur, working mom sort of thing. Which is a lot about what I write about in the book. And I'm very candid and share a lot of trials and tribulations and very open and honest about a lot of my missteps and mistakes that I've learned from and things like that, because I feel like that's really the only way to help others if they can sort of learn from some of the paths that you created yourself. um, and then I decided about 10 years into my marriage that I wasn't fulfilled in the same way I once was. And it was definitely a deep soul search to make that pivot and decide to, essentially end my marriage. And I share very candidly in the book a lot of what I went through in making that choice for myself. I also, in the time I was married, had two children, so I had those obviously them to consider and their how it would impact their lives and stuff like that. They were very young at the time, and did it with love and authenticity to myself, but I also did it with sensitivity to their well-being and the well-being of their father, certainly, in that process, which unfortunately, if anybody who's been divorced knows it can turn very ugly very quickly if you're not careful. So, sort of coined myself in that space as almost like a co-parenting expert, because I found that if I was able to use a lot of my business skills and my public relations knowledge in sort of maneuvering rocky waters on behalf of my clients and managing the media on their behalf, and I applied that same mindset and that same, take a step back and speak with dignity to one another, and obviously like more of a business mindset as opposed to a romantic and personal mindset, that I was able to accomplish more for both of us, not just for my own agenda, but just, at the end of the day, just doing what was best for the children. So I write a lot about that too. And then also some of the adventures of being newly single, and taking some additional changes and steps in my life to kind of create it fulfilled as much as possible. And based in New Jersey, I took a leap of faith and also took a residence in Manhattan for both me personally as well as professionally. So I share a lot of that in the book, a lot about my own, not a celebrity, just like everybody else, just trying to earn a dollar and do good in the world. And I've often been pulled from friends who have a nice tribe of women that I lean on, and like vice versa, they lean on me to basically say, you should write a book, you should do this, you should do that, help other people other than my, close knit circle and community that I'm embedded in. So that's really why I decided to put, pen to paper, so to speak, and write this book, this memoir, to just share my own journey, and in the hopes of kind of inspiring others if they're feeling somewhat complacent or they're not completely fulfilled anymore, and whatever it may be, whether it be their career or relationship, they want to switch careers, they want to go back to work, they're stay-at-home mom, whatever it may be, that they can do it and they should believe in themselves. And we all make mistakes, but if we learn from the mistakes, then they're not really mistakes, they're just life lessons, right? So that's kind of a nutshell of what the book is about. I am a kind of a go-getter by nature. I've always been that way, a planner, setting goals, but I find that you get more out of life in general if you set smaller goals and then just build from there, as opposed to setting this monstrous one. I run my PR firm. I recently launched in this COVID-19 pandemic, we're all sort of still in, to say the least, a virtual 5 o'clock happy hour meetup with 3 other partners. That's thriving. I'm launching my keynote speaking career. I'm working on a TED Talk. I decided in this time that I'm going to go back to school, actually part-time. I'm planning to attend the University of Pennsylvania in the fall, online part-time, as I mentioned, because I obviously still have to work full-time. But I'm going to get my master's in positive psychology so that I can be an even better motivational speaker and role model. And I was excited to announce I'm working out a deal with my publisher to write another book. So that's all kind of coming in the next next year or 2 years or what have you in my life. So you're never ending. You always keep growing. And that's what I want to encourage everybody to do, because that's the only way we evolve and serve, right?
Yeah, so this is so great, and you're such a role model for all of us, and
Thank you.
empowering all of us to do more and keep going with more trials and tribulations that we have in our lives. Everyone is dealing with something or another. And after
Right.
reading your book, it was very encouraging that, you just have to get back up and face the music and keep going on. So Mindie, like while reading your book, like what I really liked about it was that it was very transparent and it was something that people can relate to.
Thank
So
you.
what do you feel was the hardest thing to write about? I don't want to give anything away, so you can go ahead and talk about it, but there were so many things where I was like, wow, wow, wow. So for you, what was the hardest thing to really put out there?
I think my hearing loss and how I came about finding out about an infidelity that was caused by my husband, that was very difficult. I actually wrote the book in such a way that that chapter can be removed, because I didn't want to cause him any pain or harm. I mean, I didn't write it. I don't think, I mean, I'm very sensitive to his feelings. We're very, very close. He's one of my best friends, and he's obviously the father of my children. So he's always going to be my family. I want him to be, but even if I didn't, he'd always be my family. And his family is my family too. And I love them dearly. So I think that was the most difficult
Mhm.
decision. And as I said, I did write the book in such a way that that chapter could have been taken out, and it would have still made sense, and it wasn't necessarily necessary to be in. However, after I did a lot of soul searching, I felt as though if I'm really going to put my heart out on the table and I'm really going to be authentic and I'm really going to tell my story, that was such a significant part. And it wasn't even the infidelity, to be honest with you. It was more, and again, I don't want to give too much away, but during that time frame, there was a good week where I thought there was a very good possibility that I might die, and not of a broken heart, not to laugh, but it was like of some health
Don't know
issues that,
why.
right, that's like sort of like, to me, that was such a very, very traumatic time in my life, because I was faced with the fact that I thought I was possibly going to die of this awful ailment that I thankfully didn't wind up having, but I thought I did for a long time. And I went to temple and I was praying, and I didn't know what my life was going to look like. I didn't know it was going to, be able to see my children grow up. And, it was very hard. And in that darkness, I think that I really gained my strength and eventually, like, it took a while, but I eventually got the strength to do what I needed to do for myself. So that's really why I included it. I didn't include it because I was trying to hurt anybody or anything like that. And I definitely don't blame him, even though that was something he did and I did not. That wasn't the reason that, we wound up getting divorced. Just sort of gave me the necessary push that I needed to eventually leave. So to answer your question, that was the hardest part, that making that decision and to write that chapter. And even now, you know, um, I had to do an audiobook. I didn't have to, but I did an audiobook, and I cried so many times reading that chapter that I had to keep redoing it because you obviously don't want to hear the author bawling her eyes out while you're reading, although it probably would have made for, you know, a compelling listen, but nevertheless, and I'm working on my TED Talk, and while I'm not obviously focusing a lot on that, that's part of it too, that just that fear factor that I faced, and reading it and practicing this talk, I still get emotional. It was a very scary time for me. So, but again, like, you know, you're gonna be honest, you have to be honest. You have to tell the whole truth, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So,
Right. No, yeah, like I really admire your frankness and talking about something so intimate and significant
thanks.
in life. So, no, I totally get that. And I wish you and your family happiness. And
Oh, thanks.
co-parenting is also difficult, but it's great to see that you guys have a good understanding after your split. So
Right.
that's
Yeah, we both love our children very, very much. And at the end of the day, you know, they're the two that matter the most, like their happiness and their security and their mindset. So we both share that. Thank goodness. Otherwise, it would obviously be a little bit of a different situation. And we both love each other just a little bit differently now than we did before, but we definitely have respect and love for one another even today. So yeah.
So I just want to say hi to everyone. We have a lot of viewers. Thank you for all
Yay.
of hi Snowmar, hi Book Ramped, and hi to everyone. Thank you for joining us. If you guys have any questions, if you'd like to ask Mindie something, please comment, say hi to us. We love all of the love and support. But moving right along, so you are definitely a super mama and a boss lady,
Oh,
a
thanks.
warrior, which is so awesome because I, you know, love to support my fellow females along with men, but of
Yeah,
course, females, right? And
right.
so how do you manage like, you know, life, work, social life, kids, co-parenting? Like, how do you have time for it all, and how do you have that work-life balance? Like,
I don't,
give us advice.
it's hard. I mean, I'll be honest, as we're going to keep real, right? I don't really think I have a very good work-life balance. I sort of just go with the flow in the sense if work is super heavy, then my personal life is sort of, I don't want to say put on the wayside, but obviously the pie isn't evenly divided. And when I am able to soak up some extra downtime for myself or spend a little extra time with my children, if work is a little bit, I don't think it really ever gets light in all honesty because we have so many different types of clients in the PR firm, but I have a really talented team that I'm very graced and blessed with. So if I'm able to kind of delegate a little bit more to them in a given moment and spend a little more time on myself for self-care or my kids, then I obviously will do that too. But it's like a grind. I mean, it's like every day is different. In fact, today, I'll be honest, I woke up with so much anxiety. I'm like, I don't even know why I'm anxious about. Have you ever had that? Like, I'm like, what the heck am I anxious about? Nothing's
All of us
different. Nothing.
anxious. Like,
Yeah. Yes. I mean, I think it's because I had like one or two, not even this. This is fun and pleasurable for me, but like just one or two extra things on my plate today that were earlier this morning and sort of like rocked my brain a little bit. And so I threw me off. So then I felt like kids were like, "You're so mean today, Mom."
yeah.
Like, I don't mean to be. I'm sorry. I'm not mad at you. I'm just like, I'm just stressed out. But anyway, I just take it one day at a time. I'm very organized. I have lots of lists for lists. I've always kind of, you know, did the best. I always present the best. I always, you know, soar, if you will. When I'm extra busy, I think it's times when I'm not, like, you know, in the downtime, even with the pandemic, with the recent shutdown in New Jersey, like my office was closed. We were still working remote, but I'd say a good 6 or 7 of my clients, big ones too, were shut down. So they put us on hold. So there was less work is what I'm trying to get at, but I still had to find stuff to do to fill in the time. So I started that virtual 5 o'clock group, and I, you know, started looking at school, and like I started working on my speech and things that I, you know, like that to keep myself just as busy as I was before, because I don't survive well in like calmness, like completely nothing going on. I need to always be kind of extra busy. But yeah, I mean, I just think that a list one day at a time. Prioritizing the list for the list for the list is probably half of the course. Not freaking out if you don't get through your to-do list. I mean, sometimes things are obviously time sensitive, so they have to get done, but the things that don't necessarily have to get that done that day, I don't beat myself up about it anymore. I just move it on to the next day, and I try to tackle it before the end of the week, and then I've accomplished what I needed to accomplish. So it's sort of doing that. And the kids, and that's been different because they were home from school. My daughter's 11. She'll be 12 actually Friday, and my son's 8. So, their school has been closed. Well, now they're on summer vacation, but prior, their school had been closed since March. So I was like homeschooling, and my son's young. He's in 2nd grade. So I would have to like sit with him and do his work with him and get him on the different online meetups and Googles and things like that he needed to like research, in tandem of checking my email and taking client calls and like that kind of stuff. And I had kept my team on staff, but I cut their hours to be able to keep them all. So I took on more work, even though we had less work. My plate got more full. So that was very hard, but you just do the best you can do. I mean, I just sort of feel like you're either going to swim or you're going to sink. So I was a lifeguard, so I swim.
That's good to know. I think everyone can relate because, first of all, life in itself is very difficult, whether you're a female or male, and then you have the current situation, and then you have curveballs. So it's great to know how everyone is staying afloat. In your book, I also read a lot that spirituality means a lot to you. So do you want to elaborate about, your spirituality aspect and how that helps you cope with the stresses of life?
Absolutely. So I feel comfort to know that there's a higher power, whether I'm Jewish, but it doesn't necessarily have to be Judaism. I just think for myself, I feel comfort knowing that there's someone else in the universe looking out for me. And for me, that's God, who loves me and is giving me signs, whether it be a feather on the ground, or a license plate in front of me while I'm driving to be a sign of some sort of something, or maybe something happens for the wrong reason, like something that I wanted to happen doesn't work out. I feel like that's signs from God. Like, I believe that everything happens for a reason, and we just may not realize the reason yet, but there's someone else looking out for our best interests and things that we may not obviously have the knowledge or the power to see, that they obviously are. So I find comfort in that. I've always, I went and I write about this in the book, earlier in my marriage. When I was married, obviously I was going through some infertility issues to have my first child, and really for the first time in my life felt no control over anything. Now I feel that way all the time, so it's become much more like acceptable to me. Yes, but back then that was my first experience with true no control. So I would often go to synagogue and pray on Shabbat, pray for God to give me a baby some way, whether it's or conceiving one, adopting one, whatever it may be. I just desperately wanted to be a mother, and I felt comfort being there. I went by myself. Like, my husband didn't really go. I mean, and that was fine. And then when earlier in my career, when I was sort of in between jobs or wanted to leave a certain media market and was desperate to get out, but couldn't find another job at the time because you just never know when you're going to get the job, right? I would go to temple and pray then, or I would just pray to God from wherever I was in my house, etc. And then when I was going through that health scare I mentioned earlier, I went to temple frequently during that time frame, as well as after, when I was trying to search for some, direction of what to do with my marriage. And then after I got divorced, I embarked in this bat mitzvah journey, which I also write about, because I wanted to be a good example for my children, because I never had a traditional bat mitzvah at the age of 13, like most people do. But also, and in the process, I really wound up doing it more for myself. It was a journey for me, and I thought I was really doing it just to be this great example for my kids, because being in the temple every week and being in the presence of the rabbi and just, being around God, I felt comfort. I felt almost as if I used to feel when I was a little girl and I'd sit on my dad's lap and he would read me a story before bedtime or something like that, just like comfort. So I seek that because I think that, you know, in this very uncertain life, uncertain world, you know, nothing's different today than in terms of uncertainty than other than, well, there's more, I guess, factors about like the economy and things like that. But I mean, in general, no one really knows, right? So I just find comfort reaching for something a little bit higher, you know, and feeling like I'm more grounded in that way.
Right, right. No, I totally understand. When you just have your hands up and you're like, what to do, it's very comforting, and I can relate. Uh,
Yeah, I also, and I don't know if this is what you meant, not to cut you off. I also found a lot of solace in reaching for like the other side. I went to talk to mediums and things like that. And some people believe in that, some people don't, and that's fine. I found comfort in that. I do believe in that. I've gone to some very talented mediums who knew a lot of things and shared things that they otherwise would never have known. So, you know, they didn't give me answers about you should do this and you should do that, but it just made me feel better to know that I was getting some sort of guidance and some sort of like insight from like people that had passed on, like my grandfather, who I was very close with, who I believe is my angel in heaven right now. So,
oh, that's interesting. Moving
yeah.
right along, Mindie. For our viewers, this will be a question for the viewers. Um,
Hmm.
since you are a published author, and if anybody, you know, who didn't think they would write a book but is thinking about it, how was your journey of writing a book? Like, what advice can you give others who maybe just have a split second of maybe I should write a book? Like, is there any good advice you can tell them, the do's or don'ts, or, you know, how was your journey writing your first book?
Absolutely. So the writing part or the actual getting the publisher part or a little bit of both?
A little bit of both.
Okay. So I had a very backward situation. I actually secured the publisher before the book was written, but I was in the process of putting like a proposal together to sort of shop it around to some agents. So this is my own opinion. So I'm going to be honest. I have been being a publicist, I've repped a lot of authors in the past, and I've found that it's much more difficult to obtain exposure, whether it be on television or in print, newspaper, or feature, whatever it may be, for authors who are self-published. It's just not as credible as having a publisher publish your book. So
Right.
I knew if I was going to dedicate the time, or this was what I thought, if I was going to dedicate the time and pouring my heart into something like writing a book, that I was really only going to do it if I could get a publisher. But having said that, I know a lot of people who have self-published and are very successful, and their books are doing very well. And I think now with the way you can kind of manipulate Amazon and things like that, you could be very, very successful in self-publishing a book and becoming like a bestseller almost on Amazon if you pick the right categories and things like that. So while my second book is also going to be published, I wouldn't discourage people from self-publishing because it, you know, at the end of the day, you want to sell books, right? I mean, getting on television and doing some media, traditional media, I should say, not necessarily social media per se, like, you know, like GMA or like things like that. It's
Right.
going to be harder if you don't have a publisher. I mean, it is what it is. But I would say everybody has a story to tell. I find writing to be extremely therapeutic. So while I was writing the book for others, and I'm hoping it serves as many people as possible, it wound up serving myself too, me, because it was really, I found like so much comfort and like, you know, it was a release almost to sit down and put like the words out, you know, on paper. And even now, like kind of pulling snippets from the book and putting this TED Talk together has been extremely therapeutic and something that I look forward to doing every night. It's finished now, but when I was in the process of putting it all together, I like loved it. And I was like, I love writing, you know? So I think, I think everybody has a story. There's no story
I
that's too small
agree.
to share. Everybody has one. And I felt like, okay, so I'm complaining about my hearing loss. Like I write about that in the book, but that's like nothing in comparison to what some people deal with on a regular basis, like God forbid cancer or, you know, autoimmune diseases that are debilitating and, you know, handicaps and whatever. But, you know, my coach for this talk, she was like, but that's your issue. And that's what, it's not really what the issue is. It's how you learn from the issue and how you can use it to help others. So that would be my advice to your viewers right now. If you feel like your story isn't big enough, it is. It's your story. It's your truth. So share it. And the process would be the traditional process. If you want a publisher, would be to write a chapter, example chapter or two. I wouldn't write the whole book. I would put like a basically, I don't want to even say like a formal proposal together, because that could be extremely cumbersome and time consuming too. But maybe just like what you would basically read on the back of the book cover that gives you a synopsis of what the book would be about. Because if you do get a publisher, they're going to basically help mold your book into what it's going to wind up becoming, because they know what would be, you know, they have obviously experience that novices like myself or others watching may not. So in all honesty, my book was supposed to be really initially like a co-parenting, like how to, and I was going to talk a little bit about the divorce, but just talk about co-parenting. And he said, well, that's great. Make that a chapter or two, because he got to know me and he knew about my background. And like, you know, he's like, people are going to want to hear about you, they want to know about news. They're going to want to hear about PR. They're going to hear about your love life. They're going to want to hear about all that. They want, you know, so he's like, that's what's going to be interesting and compelling to people. And if you can give them some lessons in the other departments, that's great. But so that's what I wound up doing. And had I already had a book written, then I would have had to start from scratch. So that would be my advice. And if you're going to self-publish, then just go ahead and write, you know, and then you can get a self-publisher and they'll help you edit it and things like that too. So it depends on what route you want to take.
Okay, awesome. That, I think that should help people. If, you know, information is always good. So
Yeah.
and so I think readers sometimes are like, oh, maybe I can write. And so this is always good information.
Everybody can write.
Exactly.
Everybody can.
So,
Yeah.
So tell us, how do we purchase your book? Like, where
Sure.
on this beauty?
So it's on Amazon. It's Intermission, How Fervor, Friendships, and Faith Took Me to the Second Act. And it's now out in paperback. It was hardback before, but now thankfully the hardback sold out. So now it's paperback. And it's also available at Barnes & Noble, you know, Books A Million, pretty much any bookstore that you buy a book, you can find it. It's also available on audiobook if you don't want to read and you just want to listen in the car or while you're on a walk or whatever it may be. It's my voice on it, so you'll hear me. Sorry, I'm just kidding.
I enjoy it. Well, it would be good.
Yeah. No, I'm only teasing. But it is me. And that's basically it. So I really would love for everybody to pick it up. Let me know what you think. You know, on Instagram as obviously Mindie.Barnett. I love to hear from my readers and listeners and stuff like that. And I write you right back. It's me. So yeah.
And as you were sharing, you're writing another book.
I am. So I'm writing a book, actually. It's a business book, but it's a women's business book. Okay. And it's going to be about lessons that I learned in the pageant industry. Oh, okay. So if you recall, there was a chapter about me being in like a local Miss America or pageant. Yes. And embracing your feminine side, because I think in this I don't know, unfortunate Me Too climate, you know, we're all kind of embracing our masculine side, which is great, but I think we're almost becoming ashamed of being a dainty flower in a sense, and like putting those, I'm not saying that we're all dainty flowers, I'm just saying like you can be just as you know, polished and just as powerful being a feminine female as, you know, like a tough as nails one. You can marry the two notions and be your true self. So it's a lot about that. And I'm also planning on, I can't really share yet because it's not solidified, but I'm very close to securing some very, very powerful, well-known celebrity pageant winners and contestants and things like that to include in the book too. So the title's TBA. I don't have that yet.
Forward to.
Yeah, but I'll let you know as soon as I have it.
Yes,
do like a whole.
I would love to read it and, you know, give my thoughts on it. But Mindie, you know, I guess we have come to an end because this is all time permits us. But thank you so much for talking with me and the viewers, yours and mine. And, I wish you all the best on this book. I really enjoyed it, guys.
Thank you.
And it's been so nice meeting you. And
You too.
I feel like I've gained a friend. So,
Me too. You definitely have. That's the best part, right? Yeah, we'll definitely stay in touch.
so
And
wishing you all the best in your
thank
journey.
you too. You too. Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Take
Okay.
care.
That. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.